Mr. Garza, welcome to 13 Action News. Thanks for coming on.
You bet. It's a pleasure.
So let's talk about the Libre Initiative.
Yes.
In case people don't know, this is an attempt essentially to reach out to Hispanics with a different kind of message, a freedom message, an economic message. There's a lot of talk about, and you and I have talked in the past about funding by the Koch brothers. Guess what? I don't want to talk anything about that.
Great.
I want to ask you, I bet it's great. I want to ask you a simple question to start. What is your argument for Latinos to vote for Donald Trump? Or have you just given up on Trump and you're just making the argument now for Latinos here in Nevada to vote for Joe Hack?
Well, I mean, our effort has always been about principles and ideas. You know, we believe ideas have consequences, and that smart policy allows people to thrive and flourish. And for us, on the presidential, we've stayed neutral, mainly because, you know, there's an uncertainty about an untested person who has not, you know, had to vote for anything in the past.
Is that a euphemism? I mean, are you dancing around that?
No, I'm being serious. There's an uncertainty. We don't know how one is going to govern when they haven't governed in the past, you know, and so...
So you'll never support anybody who hasn't governed in the past? You didn't support Mitt Romney?
Not necessarily. You know, it depends on, you know, the kind of information that the person is putting out. I'm not, you know, ruling that out, but, you know, we needed more certainty. We didn't get it, and so we're staying neutral. We just don't feel that confidence, you know, to back one over the other.
You're offended, though, by a lot of the stuff that Donald Trump has said about Latinos, aren't you?
Well, you know, obviously, I've questioned a lot of his rhetoric and the narrative that is being driven on both sides, honestly. Look, you know, when someone refers to Latinos as needy, that's condescending, too, right? And so there's a lack of enthusiasm, believe me, with both.
That's false equivalence, though, don't you think? I mean, you have good reasons to support Republicans. We're going to get to that in a moment. Yeah. But it's false equivalence to compare the way that Hillary Clinton...
Well, fundamentally, it comes down to the ideas. And we get back to that, right? How are you going to govern? And that is what has direct, major impact on Latinos, you know, who are scraping their knees with this tough economy. There are barriers to opportunity. And, you know, those have to be addressed with smart, intelligent policies. And a lot of those policies, we believe, requires less government, not more. Less regulations, not more. Less tax burden, not more. More school choice, not less. And so when you have somebody, you know, two candidates who have failed on the ethics test or the character test, well, then now you have to look at, you know, what are the policies that they're driving, and fundamentally that's what we need to get to.
You know, it must be frustrating for you because here you have, and you and I have talked about this in the past too, and I've seen it. Most people, including a lot of people in my business, think that the #1 issue for Latinos is immigration. Yeah. It's not. It's the economy and jobs, which is your main issue as well. But it's been so overtaken by all the talk of immigration, Donald Trump starting with Build a Wall, Hillary Clinton making an obvious pitch, right, for the Hispanic vote. She came here, talked to Dreamers. This is where it all started. You must be frustrated, considering what, let's give you the benefit of the doubt here and say you are all about ideas, right? Yeah. The whole economic message is not getting through. It's being blocked, essentially, by all the talk about immigration, right?
Frankly, on immigration, even when they do talk about immigration, we find that it's empty rhetoric and empty promises on one side and sort of a harsh position on the other side, and it's like we're getting nowhere, and we're not working towards the middle. We're not working towards, you know, consensus. I don't want to diminish the issue of immigration, but you're absolutely right. Jobs in the economy is always #1 on all the polls. Education is #2. And then, of course, 3 or 4 depends between national security and health care. And then you get to immigration. But, you know, look, Harry Reid, for example, promised immigration reform when Barack Obama ran his first time. They had the Senate. He had the Senate for the first 2 years, and they had the House. Ignored it completely, pandered on the issue, but did nothing with it and went to Obamacare. That's frustrating. You know,
I'm glad you brought that up, and you helped me by giving me a segue to my next question, which I greatly appreciate. You mentioned this on Twitter just yesterday. Yeah. In 2008, Harry Reid ignored Latinos by passing on immigration reform, pushed Obamacare instead, and now his hand-picked successor, and you mentioned Catherine Cortez Masto. So let me ask you a question. Let's suppose that you're right, and there was a lot of criticism, by the way, of what happened with immigration reform or lack thereof in the first part of the Obama presidency, right? Because they had the votes theoretically to do it then. Do you remember what happened to Harry Reid in 2010 because of that? Do you remember? He won re-election, and he won a huge majority of Latinos. So I don't buy your premise.
Well, no, but Harry Reid, you have to understand, has built quite a machine, and he has, of course, the backing of the unions. And so there's no question that he is formidable, and was for the longest time in Nevada. But my point is that they used the issue to earn cheap political points from the Latino community and to prop up their failed big programs, that are leftist and progressive and that we feel do nothing for Latinos except, induce more government dependency and looking at government as the answer to every social ill under the sun, instead of increasing productivity in the private sector, creating more job opportunities by actually reducing barriers for business startups, for entrepreneurs. Less taxes would help with that, less regulations, or reforming Obamacare would be a huge start, in getting, cracking on that. And of course, the fact that Cortez Masto opposes school choice tells me that she is not truly looking out for the interests of Latino parents or their Latino children. Why? Because, look, it's fundamental to our freedoms to be able to choose the kind of education that we want for your children. And when you choose special interest, instead of allowing that kind of opportunity for Latinos, I have to question, where is your interest?
Well, what special interest do you think she, I didn't mean to get into
school
discussion
unions and school,
So you think it's all about the teachers'
and
unions
bureaucrats? Of course it is. And the money that you're getting, look, she's going to be beholden to party interest. And to whatever the party line is, that's what she's going to do in Washington, D.C. And my point with Harry Reid about going to Washington, D.C. and ignoring Latinos and immigration reform, when they had made crystal clear promises about it, speaks to that issue. That when it comes down to what the party wants, that's what they're going to do. Instead of looking out for all the promises that they make to the Latino community.
Joe Heck won't look out for the Republican
Look, Joe Heck is strong. He has supported immigration reform when it was not popular to do so. He has, of course, advanced legislation that would reduce taxes, that would reform Obamacare, that would
Tell me about Joe
cut
Heck's votes on
regulations.
immigration reform. Tell me the immigration reform.
Yeah, he has a very pragmatic approach on immigration reform.
But he's never had a chance to vote for it, and this gets exactly to the point.
But look, I've heard his rhetoric. He understands that you have to address market forces, and that's important here, because what he's talking about is how do we then deal with the 11 million that are here, and he's not afraid to tackle that issue. That's the one issue that everybody tries to skip around and tries not to address. He's talked about that issue in a way that we can bring legalization to folks and get on with the business of assimilation, and that's important for a lot of folks who want the certainty that they won't be deported, but can contribute to our economy and make our country stronger.
I think the same here as I did the last time I interviewed you with. Just someday you're going to be on a ballot and be a formidable candidate because you can change the subject so quickly off of what we were talking about. Let me get back to school choice.
Thanks, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, I think is the right answer. Yeah. School choice, you mentioned it, and again, I didn't want to get into a discussion on this, but you're upset that Catherine Cortez Masto essentially has taken a position against school choice, and you're saying that she's choosing special interests, referring to teachers' unions, maybe even the education establishment over families, as how you would portray it. The other way to look at that, if I can play devil's advocate with you, is that school choice is seen by a lot of people, and maybe even a lot of Latinos, as favoring the wealthy, as giving opportunities to the wealthy or enhancing opportunities for the wealthy, but not helping really poor families.
This is a policy initiative that would empower Latino parents to take their children in what is a failed school, if it is, or whether it is or whether it isn't. But it gives them the autonomy to say, I want my child in a Catholic private school. I want my child in this private school that has shown tremendous success.
Public money for private purpose like that? Well,
it's your money.
How does that fit in with the Libre Initiative?
No. See, public money, you make it sound like it's some foreign pot or something like that. It's money that you contribute, that you get back in a tax credit through ESA. This is, again, it's about reversing the centralization of power and money from elected officials to want to live out the dreams of politicians and live out your own. That's what we're fighting for here, is that you empower the individual, where the government more and more has imposed itself on our lives through taking more control over our personal decisions. Look, I think what we're fighting for more than anything is to make sure that the private sector is unleashed, that the individual is unleashed to create innovation, more opportunity to get on with the business of increasing productivity and creating those jobs that we need.
You have naturally, as a lot of Republicans and Republican-oriented groups have seized, you mentioned Obamacare already, this recent news about what's going to happen next year with the premiums, and then
25%.
They're going to double for a lot of families. And listen, I don't want to get into all going through.
It was predictable.
Yeah, well, what's good about Obamacare and what's bad. Yeah. But this is bad. This is a bad story. It's a bad story for Obamacare coming out at the worst time. What makes you so sure that Joe Heck will be better on that than Catherine Cortez Masto?
Well, I mean, but take a look at the totality of his agenda set, which is one that focuses on reversing against the size and the scope and the growth of government and government programs that have induced this government dependency. Look, it was predictable that because they had put in price controls, because they had the community sliding scale, because they had said that those who are younger and healthier are going to pay more, and the way they had actually created this program, we knew that premiums were going to spike. We had predicted that. We had said that. We knew that deductibles were going to be sky high, $7,000 deductible. And the counter argument is always, well, now there's 30 more million people who are insured, much more than before Obamacare.
Well, a lot of those are Hispanics,
I'll tell you why I'm dismissing that and why I'm resentful of that. Because it doesn't matter if you're insured when you're actually putting off health care because the deductible is so high and the out-of-pocket costs are sky high.
You're saying it's bad insurance.
Look, you're paying high premiums, you're paying high deductibles, you're paying high out-of-pocket costs. When do the insurers pay? The ones who are getting the shaft are actually the consumers. Young Latinos who are healthy are getting the shaft. So Cortez Masto has said that she's going to prop it up, she's going to support it. Ignoring what is truly the problem here is that we need to do away with Obamacare and get it an alternative that is actually going to improve competitiveness, focus on the consumer, and get down to the business of actually reducing premiums and increasing the access to care, not restricting it so much where it's gotten so expensive that people are putting off health care now.
Do you have sleepless nights because as a Latino man, you were trying to prevent the first Latina from being elected to the U.S. Senate? Do you feel guilt, sir, when you look in the mirror?
Man, I'll tell you, and this is, I'm being frank, all things being equal, if it was a Latina versus a non-Latina, a white male, I would vote for the Latina because we need that kind of representation. There is a thing about a shared culture and shared sentiments, right, and these kind of things that I think maybe she has more sensitivities to the Latino community. But here, all things are not equal. Her agenda is one that is actually pernicious to the Latino community because she's going to increase taxes. She's going to rubber stamp all the big federal programs and ideas that Hillary Clinton has. I detest Hillary Clinton's agenda. I'll tell you that right now, flat out. She's going to rubber stamp all of that. And she is not going to improve on Obamacare.
Is it painful for you at all?
A little bit, again, because I do want that kind of a cultural representation in the Senate, but not with that kind of agenda. It actually hurts the Latino community, not helps it.
We have a few minutes left. I do want to talk about the Libre Initiative and what you're doing, not just across the country, to reach out to the community and get more votes for Republicans. What are you doing here in Nevada?
Free market.
Okay. I understand.
Movement.
Right, exactly. Okay, it's the same thing.
In this case, we have declared our opposition to Cortez Masto.
So what are you doing here? Here in Nevada, here's what, this race could be argued is the most important Senate race in the country. It's the only one the Republicans have a chance to take from the Democrats. Yep. And it's been seen as a toss-up for a long time. The early voting numbers don't look good for the Republicans in this state. What are you doing to try to help them?
Newsflash, Nevada is really important to the electoral map and the power of the Senate. Look, no question that the Latino voter is going to define the Senate race here in Nevada. And we want to make sure that in this Senate election, it is made very clear to the Latinos what the options are. More free markets, more government that is going to cost you more at the end of the day. And so, for us, it's important to educate and inform the Latino community. So what are you doing? So what we're doing is we have thousands of volunteers across the country, but we have hundreds of volunteers here in Nevada who are canvassing. We have visited over 20,000 homes already here in the Las Vegas area alone, Latinos, to inform them and educate them on the clear difference between Masto and HEC. We're also making hundreds of thousands of phone calls. I think we're up to over 250,000 phone calls. There will be 300,000 Latino voters here in Nevada, of the 800,000 who reside in Nevada. That's an important electoral block because they're 20% of the electorate. Well, they're 28% of the population, but they'll be 16% in the previous election. We think it's going to be about 18 to 20% in this election cycle. Because they figure so strongly in determining the results of the election, obviously this is a very important state.
What's the pitch?
Well, again,
is it the free market pitch?
The direction of the country is going to be set by this election for many years to come. And it is, of course, very much a free market pitch. how we begin to eliminate a two-tiered society where we're creating a dependent, subsistent living for a segment of society, and then the folks who have access to free market and have moved on to bigger and better things and have improved their lives. We want to make sure that we are advancing policies, and in this case, a candidate that is going to increase productivity in the private sector. That is also, of course, going to reduce the burden on businesses and startups. That is the way you create opportunities in America, always has been. And we want Latinos to succeed. We want a thriving, prosperous Latino community to have a thriving, prosperous America.
Have you brought?
We're interdependent.
Have you brought some of your volunteers from other states into Nevada at the 11th hour to try to
So
help?
the folks who have been canvassing are all local folks. Local Latinos.
I'm just wondering if
who
you
have
beefed
enlisted.
them up at
But
all.
we have folks in Texas and some other states who have been calling into Texas because obviously technology allows you to do that. But the volunteer force that is canvassing and visiting homes and talking to their fellow Latinos are all homegrown folks who believe in what we're doing, who have embraced what we're doing. It's also the same volunteers who have been working with folks who tried to help them in gaining their driver's licenses, getting their citizenship,
Right.
Learn English. These are all barriers to opportunity. And we want to make sure that we're reducing these barriers and positioning people so that they can access the marketplace and leverage their skills and their talents better so they can make more money and thrive.
Mr. Garza, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Mr. Ralston.
All right.